Hey guys, welcome to the FitTown show. This is Coach Andrew with Coach Danielle, and today we're going to be talking about how to eat for your goals. And this could sound like a potentially advanced or complex topic, but really our goal with today's episode is to help simplify nutrition for you and kind of bring it back to the basics while also helping you guys start to customize your approach a little bit to what you're trying to accomplish individually, whether that be more weight loss, more muscle gain, more performance-based, more health and longevity, and talk about how you may want to approach food a little bit differently if you fit under one of those categories. But really, there's basics that are overlapping for everybody, so we want to kind of show you what those basics are while also showing you how you can kind of dive in and niche down a little bit based on where you want to go individually. So we're going to start with 3 basic principles to kind of give you this aerial view of how you may want to eat specifically for your goals. So the first one is that if you want to focus specifically on how much you weigh, okay, and for most people they're trying to lose weight, and then we have a handful of people that are trying to gain weight. If you're trying to lose weight, the best thing that you can focus on to get that number down is the quantity of calories you're eating, all right? So your food quantity. If you want to optimize your health and your longevity, then you primarily want to focus on your food quality, okay? Eating real foods, eating fresh foods, high quality foods. We'll talk about what that means here in a second. And then if you want to optimize your performance or your body composition, you want to not just weigh less, but you want to look a certain way. You want to be, lean and have toning and things like that. Then you want to focus on the macronutrient breakdown of those foods that you're eating, okay? And we'll break down what that means specifically. So most people have multifaceted goals as well. They're not just trying to accomplish one thing. They want to live a long time and they want to perform well in the gym. They want to lose weight and they want to be healthier. They want to have more energy. So when you have these multifaceted goals, that's where the basics really become so important. So Danielle, I'll give you a chance to kind of chime in here a little bit. What are your first thoughts on some of this stuff, and how do you like to approach it, I guess, with your clients?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, if you were to go with a first step, I feel like that's definitely quality of food. If you're eating, mostly processed foods, just like the highly palatable stuff that's manipulated to make you crave it, that would definitely be the lowest hanging fruit to tackle, trying to eliminate that kind of stuff, or just minimize how much we're actually eating that and replacing it with more whole foods. So I would say for the most part, that first step is just trying to clean up and avoid anything that has more than 1 or 2, 3 ingredients. Whole foods with expiration dates is kind of a great way to look at it, and I think that's kind of the first step into eating just a little bit better. So not necessarily completely getting rid of all that, but trying to fill your plate with high quality foods first, and then that's going to kind of push everything else to the side, or at least lessen those quantities that you're consuming. Then from there, once you kind of have that, if that's not helping you reach your goal, then it's more of a quantity issue, and that's when you can kind of start to dig deep into that. So I think it's important to focus on both, but I think quality is a great gateway into just a healthier living before you tackle maybe the tougher stuff.
I think that's so interesting because we literally just opened up by saying if you want to optimize your weight, which I think is if we were to narrow it down, that's the primary number one motivator that people start to focus on their nutrition, is they want to get their weight. They want weight loss. They want to see a lower number on the scale. I would say that's the number one reason. Yet we kind of went against what we said, which is don't focus on calories right off the bat. Focus on food quality first. Focus on eating real foods and eating a higher quality food. And I guess the thing that I think that was kind of assumed in what you were saying is that the food quality is likely to affect the quantity, right? Because you had mentioned that if you start to get some of these higher quality foods in there, it's likely going to push out some of those higher calorie foods. Is that what you...
Yeah, essentially. I think that a lot of people, we've talked about this, you and I, but people kind of either go one route or the other, and there's really no in between. You eat like a paleo lifestyle, or a lot of people who've come in with like previous Whole30 challenges. Or, when you hear tracking macros, that's, I get to eat donuts and this and that. And majority of people who track macros probably eat cleaner than the people who eat paleo, or just as close, and can sustain that a lot longer. And also have the details of going a little bit deeper to help them reach their goals a little bit quicker. So I think like a lot of people who are in the gym already have a general understanding of like carbs and maybe fat, but typically carbs and protein, we know in the gym that we should be like eating those things and kind of how to structure meals, just because that's like what we've ingrained in our culture. But a lot of people who aren't in our gym are coming for nutrition coaching and have like no idea or no desire to work out. They are coming in eating really, really, really bad. Eating out breakfast, lunch, dinner most days just because they're busy. So I do think that, tackling quality first is important, but it's not the only thing to focus on.
Yeah, I think it's really important to point out the interrelationship between these. It's not, if you get into the weeds, a lot of people want to argue which is more important, food quality or food quantity. You could spend the rest of your life arguing which is more important, but it's really important to understand that they're not mutually exclusive, and there's a lot of interrelationship there, and that if you eat a good quality diet of a lot of protein and veggies and fresh fruits and more like single ingredient like grains and nuts and seeds and things like that, then you're gonna feel full a lot faster, you're gonna feel satisfied a lot faster, and you should eat less by definition. And then on the flip side, if you start to track those calories and you start to dial that in, that almost by definition is going to push you to more of these quality foods, because you're going to learn over time that, when I eat, the donut that you mentioned, it becomes really hard to reel my calories in at the end of the day or hit my macronutrient numbers, because I'm just still hungry. It didn't really satisfy me. It satisfies the craving, but I don't feel full and satisfied on a deep level when I do that. So by focusing on quantity, it almost pushes you to a better quality, and by focusing on quality, it can often push you into a better quantity.
Yeah, and definitely helps you kind of just gain the understanding of what is in the foods. And we've talked about this on previous podcasts, but a lot of the times when we do focus on quality, and that's our only focus, like the more paleo lifestyle, we tend to go very heavy with the oils and the butters, because you can buy, very healthy butter, ghee, oil, whatever it is, and it makes our stuff taste better, but then we're adding hundreds of calories to meals to make them taste good because it's healthy, and then calorically, we're eating way more than we think, than we feel, and than we should be as well. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of trap foods, which is like your fats, your oils. I think nuts is a big one. Nut butters is huge. If you're doing paleo or keto, that can be one that you can really overconsume. Rice is one that I know personally is easier to consume than other types of like starches like potatoes and sweet potatoes. And then you have this whole category of healthier packaged foods that I really want people to see as, yes, it's a better decision than the unhealthier version, right? If you're getting organic and gluten-free packaged foods, it's probably a notch better. It's 5% better than the non-organic, non-gluten-free version, but it's still a treat. It's still a dessert. And if you categorize that as your healthy stuff, if you think that is food quality, that's where a lot of people miss the boat. I know when we used to do paleo challenges, the people who were quick to talk about like the paleo treats, the paleo muffins, the paleo pancakes, paleo desserts, you could tell that those people really weren't trying to get the essence of what we were trying to accomplish, which is like, no, what are the proteins, the veggies, the fruits, the nuts and seeds, the fats that you love that are really healthy for you, that you want to make up the 90% of your diet around. And then I don't care what you do in the 10%, but like, let's focus on food quality in that 90%, and not like, how can I get these packaged foods or these treats into my 90%?
Right.
Now, when we talk about food quality, let's dive deeper into what that is or where you recommend people start with that. So if they are off track, like how should they attack improving that category?
So I think the addition of veggies is kind of the first step. So a lot of people who aren't eating super healthy, or they eat out for the majority of their meals, maybe they get a salad thinking that it's healthy, and it could be, but most of the time it's really not. But the addition of veggies would definitely be the first step. And then, if you're eating your veggies and your protein on your plate first, kind of like we talked about, that's going to leave less room in your belly to, for the carbs and the fats or the sweets, whatever it is. So I think the addition of veggies is first, and then kind of going back to that plate method, like getting in a lean protein at every single meal. So again, just kind of pushing out the need for anything else, because you're filling up on these proteins and veggies first, I think is a really good step. And then I typically try and stay away from like cooking with oils and stuff. I think that's a really easy thing to eliminate. Doesn't make you feel any hungrier, maybe changes the taste just a little bit. But those are typically the first things to...
You use a lot of sprays, right? Just a way to kind of minimize the amount you're using. You're still using a little bit so you can cook effectively, but it significantly decreases those quantities. Yeah,
for the most part. And even though it's not like completely level, like a tablespoon of olive oil has 120 calories, whereas a 4-ounce chicken breast has 120 calories. 4 ounces of chicken is going to fill you up a lot more, and chicken is protein and olive oil is a fat, but still, just like the volume in your belly, you can like visualize the difference. Obviously, you're going to be much more satisfied from eating a whole chicken breast than you would be cooking your veggies with oil.
Yeah, and if you're having leaner proteins, you're not using a ton of oil, you're having these lower carb vegetables, your greens would be a good example. Like, you essentially could eat a pretty unlimited amount of those things, because your body's going to tell you when you're full. Like, your body's going to give you true hunger and satisfaction signals on those types of foods, where it might not give you that on even something healthier like fruit. You might be able to overeat a little bit easier, but it's going to be really hard to overeat a lean protein in a veggie.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I feel like people who there's a lot of people who come in and they're like, I just don't like veggies. There is always a couple that you can find that you do like, and that's like a great snack. Like, finding a couple that you enjoy with dinner, a couple that you can take on the road, I think is a really easy way to kind of keep the hunger at bay and not go off track.
Yeah, I think there's a couple other things that come to mind for me with food quality. It would be foods that actually go bad. So I think that's a good way to think about it. We talk about the perimeter of the grocery store when you're shopping, but most healthier foods tend to go bad within a week or two, need to be refrigerated, or once they're open, need to be used pretty quickly. So that's just kind of a good rule of thumb. And the more foods that you can get that have a single ingredient in them, and potentially don't even have an ingredients label at all, the better. When you buy chicken at the store, you buy ground beef, you buy ground turkey, you buy broccoli, avocados, bananas, those things don't have a label. It's just the single ingredient. And I think the more of those foods you can get, the better. A lot of people will want to eat healthier, and they'll go for whole wheat bread. And I definitely think something like that could have its place in someone's diet, but those are things that have a lot of ingredients. They're pretty decently heavily processed, and you can easily overeat them if you don't have a great tracking regimen that keeps you in check. So I like to see people go into that direction. You had mentioned eating at home versus eating out is a very big one, because you never know what's being put in that food if you're eating out. And then I think liquid calories is a really big one as well. Like, pay attention to where those liquid calories are, whether that be sodas or things that you think are healthier, like juices, that may be adding up to a lot of sugar in your diet.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Coffee.
Yeah.
A big one.
Yeah, what you put in your coffee, right? Not the coffee itself, but all the things that you add to create coffee-like beverages.
Yes.
We'll call them milkshakes. So how do you define food quantity? Let's shift to that. So again, we talked about at the top, if you want to control how much you weigh, it's primarily going to come down to the quantity of your food that you're eating. How do you define that?
So I think the simplest way and like the most well-known, whether you know what it is or not, is our macronutrients. So the foods that we're consuming in large quantities, proteins, carbs, and fats. Those are typically what's manipulated to reach those, you could say, higher goals or different goals, the body composition goals, performance goals. They're kind of broken down into those three categories versus micronutrients, things that we consume in small quantities, vitamins,
right,
minerals, stuff like that.
Cool. And what about calories? Where does calories come in? How do you think about calories versus the actual macronutrients?
So if I were to put them in a pyramid, calories are kind of most important, I would say. If you're tracking macros, you're also tracking calories, and we can get into like the science behind that or the math behind that. But calories is kind of first and foremost, protein from there, and then carbs and fats are kind of neutral. I would put carbs like slightly above fats, but depending on your certain situation. So calories and then proteins, carbs and fats below that.
Okay. So I see a lot of people, I think the most common thing that I see with people that go on a diet, the first thing they do is they say, I want to track my calories, right? And that can be an effective way to lose weight because we're controlling that primary variable, calories in versus calories out, that will affect the weight. Where do you think people tend to go wrong with that when they focus on calories? Or, I mean, maybe they're doing stuff right, but like where does it not tell the whole story for them?
So I feel like the biggest difference, regardless of if you have performance goals, fitness goals, whatever it is, the biggest problem is always going to be protein. So calorie trackers are great, but we're gonna tend to go towards carbs and fats. They're just really good for the most part. They taste the best for most of us. So under consuming protein is definitely the biggest flaw that we have when we're just focusing on calories. I do think calories is a great way to start, but protein should be following right after that for sure.
Yeah. And then what about eating too many or too little? Do you see that happening often with people who track calories?
Yeah, my favorite thing in the whole world is getting somebody to sign up who wants to lose weight, and then I make them eat more. So yeah, I feel like, just over the years and decades, it's always been like females can't eat carbs specifically, but the fewer calories, the better if you want to lose weight, and that's just simply not the truth. And people are getting more and more open to the idea of eating more to lose weight, but a lot of the time our body is just not performing optimally, and it's in, I guess, survival mode is kind of an overused term, but essentially that's what it is. It's trying to do the processes that it has to do, so it doesn't feel like it has enough energy or a place to be able to build muscle or lose body fat if it's not eating enough. So yeah, definitely a lot of under-eating, probably just as much as overeating.
Yeah, I would say when people are tracking, they're more likely to undereat than overeat. If they're actually hitting the number they set, they just probably set a number that was too low for them. Can you share, you had shared it with me the other day, but basically I think when you were at your leanest in the last year and a half, 2 years, you were eating the most. Can you break that down and give us some specifics on that?
Yeah, so I had gone through bulk right before we moved here. We kind of moved here like on a whim. So quickly turned that into a cut after bulking for the first time. So yeah, lost whatever weight I had put on, and then once I kind of got to where I was comfortable, I increased my calories, so reverse dieting. I did that, and I just kept going. So I was eating, I don't know, more than Austin. And
how many calories is that?
Almost 3,000, if not over. Which I could do no problem. Can't wait to be back to that. But yeah, and like my body fat just kept going down. Like it was just like so comfortable, almost to the point where like I was too lean. But, hormone-wise and everything, I was totally fine. Like, female stuff was all great, but I just kept getting leaner and leaner, and I was eating so much food. Yeah, it was awesome. And that wasn't just, I didn't get to 3,000 calories just with one reverse diet, but I had been through cuts and bulks and maintenances and stuff like that to eventually push my metabolism to be able to do that. So
is that essentially what you would boil that down to? I know, the body's very complex, but like, what is the sort of mechanism that is created there? Is that just you've trained your metabolism to be able to handle food and use it better for energy as opposed to storing it, or like what's sort of happening there?
Yeah, so I definitely feel like people have their certain set point, like where your body feels the most comfortable. Jackie might sit really comfortably at like 22% body fat, and it's really hard for her to get under that, and she typically goes there, without thinking about it. Or you have other people who sit at 10% body fat, no problem. It's hard for them to get, any bigger than that or smaller or whatever. I think everybody has kind of different spots, so I feel like genetics does play into it, but I feel like we have a little bit of a control if you do it correctly to be able to, we want to eat as much as we possibly can, and I definitely think there are things that we can do to get it there to where our body just like metabolizes the nutrients really easily or really quickly or really well, geared toward what we want.
Yeah. So let's talk about people who have like tons of different goals and they kind of want it all, right? So they're people that are like, okay, well, I'm going to dial in my food quality. I'm going to dial in my food quantity. I'm going to kind of be like all in and be perfect with it. And I want to live a long time, and I want to perform well in the gym, and I want to have high energy, and I want to have abs. And like, they have all these different goals. Do you think that's possible? Do you think that's a good approach? Where could that maybe look better?
I feel like people come in with all these things. Nobody comes in and they're like, oh, I don't want to live a long life, but I really care about my abs.
I want
right
an
now.
8-pack for 10 years and then you can kill me.
Yeah, that's all I need. 10 years with an 8-pack and then I'm done. So I think picking out what you want to focus on in that immediate moment, and you can kind of take in like life surroundings as well. Like if you have a ton of stuff coming up, that you're going on trips and bachelor parties and all of this, like maybe it's a better time for you to focus on performance and, putting weight loss to the side, but just focusing on getting stronger in the gym, whatever it may be, but kind of taking everything into account. And picking that one thing that you want to focus on. And a lot of the times those other things, energy, longevity, that's all going to come also. But kind of finding where you want to narrow it in as your main priority, I feel like is good, especially when you're kind of going back and forth between, I do want to get stronger, but I want to get leaner a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. That can't happen at the same time. Or one's going to have to compensate just a little. So finding that one thing and then letting the other things kind of trickle, I think is the best way to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's good to like narrow your focus for set periods of time, and I think if you can approach it in a way where you realize you're going to have ups and downs in nutrition and your weight, but like every time you try something or work on something, you come away with something that like sticks that you can bring to the next thing. So maybe you do one of our nutrition jump starts, and in that nutrition jumpstart, like you realize, hey, I'm really under eating protein. And then that forces you to dial in this really amazing breakfast that has more protein in it. And then even when you go into maybe tracking your macronutrients later on down the road, that's something you already have in place. Versus I think a lot of times people try diets that are more extreme, or maybe there's not enough intention behind it, and they're all in and then all out, and they never come away with anything that sticks for the next thing, or just for daily life. If they're not working on anything at all, they still have this foundational habit that just is there even when they don't think about it.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes down to habits inside nutrition, inside the gym, inside just life in general, but those habits that you can set for yourself, and we've talked about it, you talk about this a lot, but doing things that move the needle just a little bit, that 1% is better than a 10%. Like a habit that's so small you don't even notice it, but it's making just a little bit of a difference each day. I think that also goes with nutrition. So maybe that's adding in an afternoon snack or packing your lunch is a little bit of a bigger habit, but I would say that if you can, find something like that to do, that's going to make a huge difference in the long run.
Cool. And the last thing I want to wrap up on is, what are your thoughts on certain people being better geared towards certain things? So just kind of their mentality, their approach to life, their outlook on life, being a better fit for focusing on food quality versus focusing on like, I'm going to track everything I eat in MyFitnessPal, and potentially weighing that in your decision of like, yes, I want to lose weight, but understanding that like, this is the amount of time and energy I want to spend on this thing.
Yeah, and we'll kind of break it down. Typically, like when we sit down, we'll break it down into a couple different routes. That could be tracking macros, that could be sitting down and kind of structuring what they're already doing, and then just slowly start to tick away at the things that the lowest hanging fruit essentially, and then kind of advancing from there. Or people who just like to be told what to eat, maybe that's the plate method, maybe that's a meal plan. But there's a couple different routes. So meal plan, you have that like same structure that some people like. Some people hate that. I would not want to eat what it told me to eat because I never know what I want to eat until I'm cooking. But some people really like that structure. Some people like the flexibility of, taking what they're already doing and then just changing like one or two things. Some people would hate that freedom. And then, the most detailed people who are just 100% in, want to do it, are asking to track macros, those are the people who would actually start tracking macros. I wouldn't ever sit down with somebody and be like, okay, here's what a macro is and we're going to start tracking them. That's just not realistically where people start unless they already have a good understanding. But like what we do, like in the jump starts, for instance, kind of learning what protein is, carbs and fats, those habits that we slowly start to change are what eventually lead you to that macro point as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We have people in our challenges or our jump starts that will we don't force anybody, or we haven't recently, to track everything they eat by quantities to the exact detail in MyFitnessPal. But you'll see some people that just do it because they're like, oh, well, I was starting to track what I was going to eat anyways, and I just figured, oh, it's easy enough for me to use this MyFitnessPal thing. Whereas for someone else, it's this huge ask and it feels so overwhelming. It's like, it's so easy for someone else. And I find it interesting with you that you were saying that you don't like to have the rigidity of a meal plan, yet you were also sharing with me the other day of how much you eat some of the same foods over and over again so consistently. So it's so funny how it's almost just more of a mentality more so than it is the actual implementation, because you almost created your own meal plan for yourself.
Yes, I guess that's exactly what I did. I made my own meal plan and now I eat the same things, but the order changes. Sometimes breakfast becomes dinner and lunch becomes breakfast. I've really been eating a salad for breakfast for like 3 weeks. And
so maybe you need a meal plan on postcards that you can move around.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, and the mental side is not something to neglect. It definitely, tracking macros can be too much for some people, especially people who come in with like that under eating mindset. The less is better. I definitely think that going into that tracking isn't just for somebody to do unguided. I definitely think that can be your mental health and well-being is also very important in determining if you should be a tracker or not. Yeah,
you kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think the hard thing is not necessarily in macronutrients and weight loss getting down. It's how do you turn it from, okay, I'm here getting close to my goal or at my goal, to how do I then increase appropriately or make it more of a lifestyle and lock these results in, as opposed to I can just get there once. Because a lot of people get there once, but really I think the coach is vital for making it sustainable and long-term.
Yeah, just because you lose weight and get to a certain place on a certain number of calories does not mean you have to stay at those calories to stay at your lower body weight at all. So it's becoming more well-known, but, it's scary to eat more when you've worked so hard to get somewhere. It's hard to turn that around for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if you need help, she's the one to see, not me. You can email Danielle at FitTown.com. Thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you on the next episode.